Tape recorder's running, right? Tape recorder's running.
I've been here in St. Louis, Missouri.
Yeah?
Haven't gone anywhere.
Oh, so you took a vacation, but you stayed in St. Louis?
It was a staycation. So It was in the true quarantine 2020 fashion. Took a vacation and didn't go anywhere.
Well, you know,
but had a great time.
A lot of people come to St. Louis for vacation. So
they do.
Why would you leave?
Well, yes, I would like to go somewhere, and I've been actually making a lot of plans for summer and beyond, so there is travel forthcoming, but the past week was just spring cleaning, doing stuff around the house, getting out in the yard, went to a outdoor festival here at one of the local breweries. They had their Oyster Fest, Schlafly Brewing,
nice.
And stood in a parking lot with about 5,000 people eating oysters and drinking beer, and without masks.
That's awesome.
So that was fun and a little bit weird, just getting used to that kind of life again.
I love your hat. It makes sense to me now. Drink Mo beer. So like drink Missouri beer.
Exactly.
That's pretty cool.
You might not know this, but there are a lot of breweries in St. Louis. They make a lot of beer here.
I've heard that.
Yeah.
Is the beer good?
There's a lot of really good beer in St. Louis. They have a lot of really good craft breweries. I'm actually not that far from the historic Anheuser-Busch brewery. Not a big fan of Budweiser most of the time. It has its time and place, but
tastes like middle school.
Yeah, it tastes like mowing the lawn. It's a great lawn mowing beer,
Yeah.
So it's like middle school.
That was like the first beer I ever had. It was like
really?
A Budweiser. Yeah.
Man, I'm trying to remember the first beer I ever had. I don't remember.
Well, the first drink I ever had was Strawberry Hill.
Wow, you admitted that in public.
I did. And then the first beer I had was a Budweiser. And then moving on into high school, it was Schaefer Light, if you remember that brand.
Oh, yeah.
That's like
I knew Schaefer very well.
It's like drinking a Falstaff or something. Everybody knows what it is.
Yeah,
anymore.
well, it's just like their slogan was actually the beer to have when you're having more than one. And so we drank a lot of Schaefer in college, and I had one of the worst jobs I ever had was I was an overnight security guard at an office building in downtown Austin. So I was locked in a 20-story building by myself all night, which was fantastic in terms of like if you wanted to catch up on reading, do some writing, great, that was fantastic. But when you would get off at like 8 o'clock in the morning and you're ready to, have a beer and go to bed, everybody else is getting on with their day. So I had a friend who was the night manager at Katz's on 6th Street, if you remember Katz's.
Oh, yeah.
Katz's never closes.
Katz's never closes.
Well, he was just getting off work at 8, and at their bar, you could buy a can of Schaefer beer for $1 American.
Wow.
So I would go drink beer with him. So Schaefer Light.
Schaefer Light.
The beer to have when you're having more than one. Boom. And now you know the rest of the story.
Thanks,
Paul Harvey. Good day.
Man, we can't go too far down memory lane because I remember listening to Paul Harvey on AM radio in South Texas.
Oh, yeah.
Back roads.
So did I. WBAP. 820 AM.
Can't remember what the name of our radio station was. No. I was about to say WKRP in Cincinnati. Why is that stuck in my head? No, that's not it. Anyway.
Well, I was a big WKRP fan too. I mean, I could tell you Johnny Fever and Les Nessman stories until you wanted to pull the plug of your computer out of the wall. So
I've seen every episode like 5 times.
Oh yeah, they're great.
Love it. Well, what are we going to talk about today? People would probably love to hear us, I'm sure, ramble on about beer, but
and AM radio and old classic television.
Old people like.
Yeah, old people things. Man, it smells like mothballs in here now. How did that happen?
So the spring cleaning.
Yeah, exactly. No.
Changing the mothballs.
Yeah. Okay. No, how about we talk about our friends at respect.studio?
I would like to. Thank you. I would like to talk about that. Because there hasn't really been a venue for, so anybody who doesn't know, the backstory is that we are engaged in some, ludicrous, crazy effort to send body armor to Ukraine. And we've actually been very successful at doing it. With a lot of help from a lot of our friends. And, I want to talk about all that, but we haven't really talked about why we're doing it. And, I think that me personally, I'm one person who's working on this. There's a lot of people who are working on it, but me personally, I've been so heads down on just getting it, open, getting the channel open so that we can directly ship body armor, over to Ukraine, that I've been giving, people updates based on what's happening with the donations they've made, and just really kind of focusing on, describing, where we are in the process and what's going on and what we've achieved so far and all that stuff. But I haven't really paused to say, hey, this is why we're doing this. And part of it was honestly, and I want to talk about it because I think it's about being a purpose-led business. And part of the reason I think that I've been a little bit hesitant to talk about it is because it seems self-serving, almost like this is some sort of platform, for us making a point. And so I struggled with that a little bit. But the more I thought about it, the more I think about it, the more I realized that people need to see examples of what a purpose-led company really looks like, and what it looks like taken to the extreme, which is where it should be. And so I feel like it's an important story to tell. So I would love to talk about that because it's related to employee experience and the relationship between employee experience and customer experience and shareholder experience, and social good, and whether you're a purpose-driven company or not.
So what does being a purpose-driven company mean for you?
Well, I was about to ask you that because I know that you've, provided a bunch of content on it. You're kind of steeped in that world. I've got my own view of, what a purpose-driven company really is and really means. But I'm curious, what would you say the survey of the industry looks like in terms of when people talk about being purpose-driven? What do you think the typical definition is of that?
I don't know that there is a typical definition. I think that there's a lot of conversation going on about, about finding purpose as an organization, as an employer, in a lot of ways, not just sort of the workplace technology conversation. I think that there's a lot of it going into the broader brand conversation, regardless of industry right now. And I think that there is a sense that, brands have the power to be a force for good in the world, that you can't just be a machine turning people's effort into profit for stakeholders. You have to have beliefs that are congruent with your community. They have to be congruent with the people who work with you in a business. And they have to aim higher than just make more money. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you on all those points. I think that, so often we've made jokes about this over the years, but, we kind of steered clear for a long time of being in the mission purpose, kind of side of the messaging business because I was frankly very cynical about it. You and I both have walked into rooms for, a long, long time where we would look at their websites or research a company before we went in, and we would inevitably find their core values page or something like that. And we'd read it, and they're all like those motivational posters, where it's like a lone wolf standing on the snow, it's like perseverance or something like that. But then when we go and experience the culture, it was nothing like, what the core values said. And also, I, used to have a joke that, core values are a list of things that people fucked up. Like if you have to have like ethical as a core value, it's like, oh my God, that's a huge red flag. Like, why do they need to like tell everyone to be ethical?
Yeah.
But I've really come around to in my mind, a broader, kind of context or understanding for what a purpose-driven organization is, and especially its relationship to the social good. And I think this conversation is important because I think a lot of people in what I just described about the core values on the website or whatever, purpose statements, mission statements. We're seeing that at scale now, right? So you see all these huge organizations that have these stakeholder capitalism messages and these, strong social good orientations and strong, purpose statements. And, it's coming through in advertising and, everything that they're doing, except how they're actually working as a company and treating their people and stuff like that. Yeah. And so now it's just kind of like there's, in my mind, even a bigger cynicism gap between, kind of companies that work really hard to promote a purpose versus companies that are truly purpose driven. And for me, that, that purpose has to be tied to social good. So I believe that if your purpose as an organization, as you say, is to make money, which a lot of times, mission statements, purpose statements, all that stuff, they're basically thinly masked money-making value propositions. And that's all, it's just all a story told from the shareholder perspective, what we'd like to achieve as a business so that, profit will be X and, person Y will receive Z check, and I think people have really struggled, and we struggled with this for years around how to clearly communicate what our purpose is. And it felt like the further that we got away from, just talking about why the business actually was started and what we actually believe and what's important to us personally, once we kind of put those two things together, that's when I think we really started to see the organization flourish a lot. And so in short, too late, sorry. I think that your organization has to exist to drive some form of social good. It has to make the world a better place, because the days of, companies being able to provide even a great employee experience, a great customer experience, and a great shareholder experience, but, poison the earth or, create harm somewhere else. I think of Amazon, for instance, in this context where, customers love Amazon. Employees, that depends on where you work, know, whether you're in the warehouse or an office or whatever. But they have been known from time to time to have a quality employee experience and to attract a lot of talent and, kind of the industry that we're in. And then shareholders, of course, did very well. Bezos is now an astronaut. And yet many people would argue that their entire business model, basically destroys the earth because of all the shipping and the paper and the cardboard and, all that stuff. And there's multiple shipments, like, hey, I'm going to order 4 things today. I'm going to order them all separately, and they're all going to come in separate boxes and separate trucks, And so I just don't think that it's sustainable for us to live in that kind of world. And so I think that every organization has to assess how their purpose is first attached to, some form of social good. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I do. And I think that I do think that makes sense. I think that there are a lot of companies that are wrestling with that very question, some successfully, probably more somewhere in the middle. In terms of like the so what?
Yeah.
How would you characterize our rationale for doing that beyond just, hey, this is social good business? There's how have we gotten the ball rolling with this, I guess is.
Yeah. So first of all, I would justify the business case for it from the perspective that eventually if your purpose is not rooted in the social good, it basically erodes the long-term sustainable ability of a company to deliver value to its shareholders. You know what I mean? It's like when there are supply chain shortages that are caused by severe weather events, or when there, this, that, or the other, you basically end up destroying your market, and that has an adverse impact. So that's the business case for that. But like, how do you actually do it? What does it mean? For us, it's very easy at the Starr Conspiracy, and that's what it's supposed to do. That's what having a clearly defined purpose and investing everything that you do with purpose is supposed to do. It's supposed to make everything easy, every decision easy, right?
And so what's our purpose?
Create abundance. And, a longer version of that is, create abundance, that echoes through the generations, right? For as many people as possible. And so that's our purpose. And, when I unpack all the years that we've been in business together, and I look back on why this whole thing started and who I am and who you are and who, so many of the people who have been with us for so many years are, nobody, especially in our group, woke up one day and said, I want to be rich. No one said, I want to create the best, website of all time, or anything like that. That was not like our motivation. But at some point, kind of these archetypes of business that you meet and these conventions of business, they just start to wash over you in layers, and the sediment, just kind of gets thicker and thicker and packs you in. And suddenly it seems totally normal to stand up in front of your company and say, our, vision is to have 500 employees. Thinly mad. This was a true vision statement of ours, 500 great jobs. And what 500 great jobs was, I think rightfully mostly interpreted by people as was, oh, we're going to grow to 5. It's a growth objective, right? And so it shows you kind of that tricky part of just layers of abstraction that always come back to size of the company, amount of revenue, value, et cetera, et cetera. When we, basically said, nobody likes this, no one's having fun, no one feels, attached to what we're doing in a significant way, we kind of went back to why do we do this, to begin with. And I think many of us share a common story, which is that we want to create as much opportunity for people as we can because of the opportunities that were created for us. I think a lot of people feel like I do inside the agency that we're constantly strangers waking up in a strange land, that, we weren't prepared for most of the things that we encountered in life and that we're not supposed to be where we are. But somehow through, multiple, just acts of generosity and our own ability to, kind of fearlessly pursue, opportunities and get outside our comfort zone. We want to create those same opportunities for people. So create abundance is our purpose. And the manifestation of that is, create abundant employee experiences, customer experiences, and shareholder experiences. So we're purpose driven to do that. We want to create abundant employee experiences because we believe, creating great employee experiences for our own people and helping other people create great employee experiences is one of the best ways to drive happiness and an abundance mindset in the world. Because your work is so important to, all aspects of your life. Abundant customer experiences where, they feel satisfied and attached to the companies that they're working with, and those companies have added value to their lives. And then this is a big, kind of complaint that I get a lot. People think I don't want shareholders to make money. And I constantly remind them that I am indeed a shareholder and I like money. I've got nothing against money. And I think that, profit should be abundant and, that financial aspect of abundance, which is a small part of what abundance means to us, but that if, you're running a good business, then it should be creating, an abundant financial outcome, for the shareholders and everyone else involved. And so, we kind of drive it into everything that we do. I mean, does that make sense? And do you feel kind of the same way? And just how things kind of changed for us when we started making decisions based on, focusing on opportunities instead of issues, on, helping people instead of just, kind of driving towards a numbers goal?
Yeah. I mean, I think that very much everything changed. And I think it's interesting because, I mean, you had your personal vision a long time before it became the company vision. And I think one of the big aha moments that I give credit to our very able colleague, Ashley Bernard, pointed out, it's just like, well, Bret, if that's your personal vision, why isn't that the company vision? And everyone kind of sat back and said, Yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense.
Well, that's why we were doing it, right? I mean, we were just doing it to, create as much opportunity for other people as we could. That's what's always brought us, the most satisfaction. It was a really keen insight.
Well, and I mean, that reframing that, I think, was very revelatory, because it really changed the way that we did everything and the way that we approached everything.
So just to be clear, what you're talking about is, for over a decade or more, I've had a personal purpose of, generating or creating generations of abundance for the people that I love. And, that's my family, that's my friends. That was the people that I worked with. Back when it was just my personal thing, it was like, I want to do this so that, I can have a positive impact on people's lives. And I would talk about it all the time, but it never would find its way into like the top level messaging that, got passed down, the pipe to, all the marketing applications and, all that stuff. And, so it was amazing to me how that simple shift towards embracing our true purpose and becoming a purpose-driven organization made everything so much easier after that, like all of our decisions. And a key part, of that, was, if you exist to create abundance, then you have to focus on people first, period. And specifically, start with the people that you work with, because that sets the stage for, basically emanating abundance, or whatever your purpose is, from your company to customers, to shareholders. And if it is a purpose that's rooted in social good, then you're also having an impact on social good every time you do something, as opposed to just cutting a check to a foundation or, changing your background on Zoom when it's Mental Health Awareness Month or,
Yeah, but I mean,
like
one thing that is, that you brought to the table that was another key insight for this is this idea of abundance is that there's more than enough for everybody. Life is not a zero-sum game, and when you stop playing life as a zero-sum game, everything changes. And it's just like, you and I have been, around this business long enough, and we've talked, to enough different companies, been in enough different conference rooms to know that not everyone sees the world that way. In fact, there's a lot of people who do approach life and business as a zero-sum game. And what was the thing that sort of like led you to that insight?
Well, I just, I think, we've had conversations over the years where basically I've always felt that the destiny of our business was in our own hands. A lot of people who run businesses of our scale now or the scale that we were 10 years ago, they think a lot about competition. They think a lot about market dynamics. They think a lot about the economy, et cetera, et cetera. And, my point was always like, we are, a pinhead on a planet, like our little corner of, even at getting close to 100 employees, our little corner of, the market is so teeny tiny that under any circumstances, we ought to have the ability to control our own destiny, unless we're constantly reacting to, macro, kind of stimuli, like so many companies do. It's like, oh no, there's a pandemic. Let's fire half the company. Oh no, there's a global financial crisis. Let's keep our powder dry. That phrase that I always like, just like a warning sign. So I think it was, that just mentality that started to, and my own recognition of the number of times I fucked up and why. And most of the biggest mistakes that I've made have been when I became super focused on, achieving some number or some, outcome. There's a story that I hate telling, but it's, I think it speaks to this growing recognition of not trying to force things. We have still, I think, a major client, a huge client, one of the biggest enterprise software companies in the world. And it got into my mind that, business to business companies don't have an agency of record the same way that business to consumer companies do. And that in most cases, these large software companies, might have 50 to 100 agencies, and, no single agency has, like a huge chunk of the, spend. But they all have these preferred partner programs. And if there was like a top 10% of, capturing, spend inside a large company, it's the folks who are in these preferred partner programs. Mm-hmm. And I went batty to try to achieve dominant, market share inside this company. And I wanted to get into that preferred marketing program. And as if not getting into it was going to cut us out of opportunities that we rightfully deserved. And I pushed it so hard that I put so many people in so many uncomfortable situations, asking for things, pushing, trying to push our own agenda, while the client just wanted their agenda, which makes sense. They want their marketing.
Yeah, go figure.
And we kept asking them, well, where are we on this preferred partner program? And, can you write this letter of referral and stuff like that? And I worked it so hard that we actually lost the client. And, it was at that moment that I was like, oh man, like I've learned this in almost every other part of my life. It's like you pursue opportunity. You don't try to fix issues or operate out of a defensive fear that if you don't take it first, then you're never going to get it, right? And somebody else is going to get something that you deserve. And I think that started to cascade into, I was basically like, God, I really fucked up there. And I need to reassess my entire approach, because that was at the same time that we were, very focused on numbers inside the organization and had a very hierarchical organization, all that stuff. So I think it was all kind of culminating at the same time, that it just seemed like our business was running on, and this is saying it's pushing it too far because we've always had great people. But I think that me personally, I created a lot of, fear and uncertainty based on, sayings like I used to have, like, somebody stole our chicken when somebody would come in and, take one of our clients, or we would celebrate winning a deal from another, competitor, and we'd say, we got their chicken. Yeah. All of those attitudes, those behaviors and those beliefs that I had around, we have to win something at someone else's expense, ran completely contrary to what I believed in my, personal life, and completely contrary to running an effective, business that does create abundance for everyone.
And so what would you say, since that shift has changed for us?
Well, I think we've made the, complete transition into being a true purpose-driven company. And so, the first thing that I would say is that we truly do put people first, and we put them at the center of all of our decisions. So as a senior leadership team, you and I meet with a team once a week, and that's the only time that we all get together. And I think we're together for like an hour and 20 minutes or something like that.
Yeah.
Once a week. And I would say, you tell me, but if somebody were like a fly on the wall in that meeting, they would think that we were the dumbest executives in the world, because we don't talk about the business very much. We've got, a scorecard that we go through in about 5 minutes that has numbers that reflect employee experience, customer experience, and shareholder experience. But after that, we're talking about people, and I don't mean people in general, that sometimes we are talking about, people inside the company and what we should be doing from an operations perspective. But largely we're talking about individuals and what support they might need. We spend a lot of time on recognition, telling stories about, great work or great things that people have done. We spend a lot of time on headlines about people, just so we know what's going on with everybody. And so I'd say 80% of the time, and sometimes more, sometimes less, we're just actually talking about specific individual people and what their experience is, and, either how great it is or how we need to provide them support for something.
Well, yeah, I think, to go off on a bit of a tangent, don't want to go too far, but what I think is worth noting is that we work in an industry that is very numbers driven, both kind of marketing and workplace technology. And I think that there is a tendency in both of those industries to analyze things to death and want to quantify things almost for the sake of quantifying them. And I remember a conversation that I had with one of our clients back in the day, and it was Jason Averbook and Jason Corsello, who are probably two of the smartest guys in the entire workplace technology industry. And one of the things I learned from that conversation was working with big companies, more often than not, there are one or two numbers on the scorecard that are most important, and you just relentlessly pursue those. You don't need 100 metrics on your scorecard. You can get it down to one. And that was such a keen insight. And as we've kind of like refined our numbers, it's just like there are fewer and fewer and fewer numbers that we're tracking, and spending less time doing that, and that, just sort of like analytics for the sake of analytics, and more time focusing on the people and conversations.
Well, you can't create, we believe that you can't create abundance for as many people as possible in a value chain that includes, or an ecosystem that includes employees, customers, and shareholders, without focusing on your people, like your people, your employees, your coworkers, your colleagues, et cetera. And so I think that, the ability to identify the small handful of numbers that, actually matter, combined with, really those just kind of two things, we are constantly evaluating our decisions against whether it's on purpose or not, which is a terrible way to say it. It sounds, kind of like on brand or whatever, but is it in line with our purpose? Is it, are we pursuing an opportunity? Or are we trying to react to an issue, So we ask ourselves a lot of questions that flow from, our purpose of, creating abundance, that make it really easy to make certain decisions. Another decision, won't talk too much about it, but we were about to spend an enormous amount of money on an office remodel. And, we made that decision, pretty early in the pandemic, because we didn't see a world where people were going to come back to the office. And we own this amazing building in the hottest, part of Fort Worth, which, for people who have not been to Fort Worth, that's going to sound like an oxymoron. But it is a really, kind of bustling neighborhood.
One of the fastest growing cities in the country.
Yeah. And already in like the top, I think it's like the 13th or something largest city in America already. Yeah. And then, no, it's not DFW. It is Fort Worth. We don't go to Dallas.
No, we have strong opinions about that.
Just kidding, Dallas. Love you guys. Just like, a good Boston Red Sox fan loves a good, Yankee fan. But shit, what was I talking about? You don't remember?
I'm thinking about all these great things about Fort Worth now.
Yeah, me too.
No, we were talking about our building and the remodel.
Yeah. So, at the time we were making the decision because we thought we could create a place that would be comfortable for people to come into, but still, kind of work remotely and just, come there when they wanted to hang out with people, fewer desks, like more, chill space, stuff like that. And then, you flash forward, a year, and we know a lot more than we knew then. And we're like, excuse me, we're about to spend 7 figures on, a big remodel of the office. And that remodel is going to benefit a very small number of people because we have employees all over the world, from Chile to Canada to Ireland to all across the United States. We have a physical office in Fort Worth that we own, and we lease an office, the same office that we've had for coming up on a decade probably, in San Francisco on 2nd Street. Maybe, and I'm guessing, maybe 40 or 50% of people could actually access one of those offices on a regular basis.
Yeah.
And so it was a huge investment that was not going to be evenly distributed, across our people. And so it became a very, and we kind of forgot, I did, because I know some people were working really hard on this, but I kind of forgot because it was, running in the background takes so long with the architects and the design and the, everything up to, figuring out appliances to order and, getting all your contracts in place and all that stuff. And so when it came back up, of course, it's one of the most expensive times ever to build anything. And so the price had increased a lot. And I think all of us instantly had the recognition, knowing what we know now, that this was not an abundant way to invest funds. It was not, so, it's us evaluating a very big financial decision But also there's, an attention economy, argument here as well, which you brought up, which is, these things are hard, and they I think you said, what was it called? The
Oedipus complex.
The Oedipus complex. I love that.
There's a lot of research that's been done that's shown that companies that are building headquarters see their financial performance dip as they're going through the exercise because their attention is basically taken off the ball of the business, and it's more about the headquarters or the structure.
So are you suggesting, Steve, that perhaps, that big skyscraper in San Francisco that Salesforce built may have cost a little bit more than the cost of construction?
Yeah, it probably did. Although I think if you went back and looked at their SEC filings, I'm sure that Salesforce did just fine. So they would probably be an outlier.
I don't know. I'd like to check on that. I wonder if there was like a dip in the trajectory or something. But anyway, I think that the other thing is that we always ask what impact it's going to have on employee experience, any decision that we make, because we believe that not only should everything we do be invested with our purpose, but that everything starts with our own people. And so we often ask a very simple question: is this good for the employee experience, or is it not? And if the answer is it's not, even if it seems like a great business idea, we just don't do it anymore, because it's just not worth the unintended consequences of, hurting what's really special about our organization, which is that we've invested so much work in creating an organization that's somewhat decentralized, somewhat autonomous, somewhat agile, somewhat flat, somewhat lean, et cetera, all these great things. And so this does, bring me to Ukraine. And I think that this is a perfect example of, a company living with purpose, and really doing what they say they're going to do. And so I was, in Las Vegas speaking at an event on the day that Russia invaded Ukraine. And I've been working with a partner, Respect Studio, Respect Studio, in Lviv for about 2 years. And I've been working directly with them, on video calls, and, I've got a team of people that work with them too. I got an email from my account manager, basically saying, hey, don't worry, we're going to keep working, though we're probably going to have to switch to texting instead of email. And I was like reading this email when I was coming off the stage, in Vegas. And I was like, I can't believe that what this person is worried about is that we're worried about business. And sure enough, I immediately wrote back, and actually, I should credit Dana, our producer, for this, because Dana was the first person to actually reach out and ask how, they were doing, because Dana's worked closely with them for a long time, was actually the person who recommended them, 2 years ago. And so, when I wrote him back, I said, don't worry about us. We'll keep paying you. And I want to emphasize, this is not self-serving. I just want people to know how this went down, because I think it's important, especially when juxtaposed, against what the typical response is to situations like these. I wrote back and said, don't worry about us. We're going to keep paying you. We'll get to the work, when that happens, but, stay safe, do what you need to do. Now, I didn't realize at the time when I made that comment that business continuity on their side is very important, because even if there's a war going on, you still have to buy groceries. So you still want, you need to shore up your accounts. You need to pay people, all that stuff. And I didn't really kind of get that at first. That was a realization that grew on me. But I wasn't in the category of people who was worried about, business continuity. And then in the coming days, I looked around and I saw a bunch of companies coming out saying, number one, we care about what's happening in Ukraine. And if we have people there, we're going to help you get out. And that was like one sentence, right? And then the next 3 paragraphs were, and dear clients, this is what we're doing to ensure business continuity. And if you read between the lines, it was all about moving their business out of Ukraine. And just to be, really clear about that, that's a big deal, because Ukraine does about $5 billion of technology outsourcing a year, and the U.S. is their biggest client. And so if the U.S. is, sending business away from Ukraine, that's going to have a huge impact on their economy. Excuse me. And so I think that the 2 mistakes there were, number one, assuming that you're offering something that people want or need. So when the first thing you do is say, we'll get you out, and most of the people want to stay in, you've kind of fucked up there, right? Mm-hmm. And the second is don't, make it all about the shareholder, view and perspective and experience, and focus on business continuity when something this significant has happened. So that's, long version of just kind of like what was going on, in my mind over those days. But in the next couple of days after the invasion, I just started reaching out to people at Respect Studio, everyone I could find on LinkedIn, whether I'd worked with them or not. And I asked them what they needed. And, most of them said very similar things, we're like, close our airspace. I'm like, well, I can't do anything about that. Other than the usual political process that, we can be engaged in. But a lot of times it came back to body armor. And, people wanted body armor to protect civilians. They wanted body armor for their civilian defense battalions. They wanted body armor for their, utility workers, their ambulance drivers, their, all of these folks, because they were staying and they were going to defend their country. And I said, okay, we'll figure it out. And, that, caused me to reach out to a person who still wants to remain anonymous, who knows a lot about, so I'm working on that. I see you, on, filing for export licenses through the Department of Commerce and, getting all these complex shipping logistics set up and sourcing body armor and all that. But we've already delivered, the funds for Respect Studio to buy body armor for them. We have acquired and sent about another 13 units of body armor. We've raised, probably about $30,000 online so far. And, a big announcement that's probably coming out pretty soon is that we have a combination of, donations from, multiple people and organizations in different forms that is probably going to lead to a very large shipment of support, that's going to be well over $500,000 in terms of, just the scale of what we're going to be able to do, working with Respect Studio, who made all of this happen. I mean, they're doing so much heavy lifting on their side, getting all these permits in place that they need on their side to be able to accept some of the stuff that we're shipping and that sort of thing. And, they work their day jobs all day because they got to keep the lights on and pay people and take care of their friends and their family and their, companies and their country. But then they work all night, just trying to get people the stuff they need. And the reason that this was important, because I think a lot of people, may have looked at this from the outside and thought, man, he's really just, he's like a dog with a bone. He's gotten on to something and he's not going to let go. But it wasn't like that. It was that we were considering our purpose. We were considering, the fact that we advocate in the market for putting your people first and for going to great lengths to meet their needs. We advocate in the market for treating people in your extended, enterprise, as we used to say back in the 90s, the people that are your freelancers and the people that you outsource work to and, your partners and all that stuff, that you treat them in a way that creates abundance and as well. And there was no way that we could look at the situation that was happening and say all the things that we were saying and feel and believe all the things that we were believing without the logical conclusion being, if they need fucking body armor, then we're going to get them body armor. And so that's where we are. And, I would just say that the reason, and thank you for throwing me the softball, the reason I wanted to talk about it today was because I haven't really circled back to why we did it. And the reason that we did it is for our people. We didn't do it to get in the paper. We didn't do it to drive leads. We didn't do it because it's a means to an end. We did it because we believe in taking care of our people. And I want people to know that if we'll do this for our partners in Ukraine, imagine what we'll do if you run into trouble. Imagine what, we'll do for you in Texas. Imagine what we'll do for you in Washington or in Chile or, wherever you are. We are going to exercise the same care, and we're going to do whatever we can to deliver on our promise, which is that we're going to make your life better. We're going to expose you to more opportunities, and we're going to create abundance for you that echoes through the generations. And I think that is, an example of being a purpose-driven company, taken to the extreme of where the thing that you end up doing doesn't look like what you do for a living,
Yeah. Well, Bret, thank you for putting all of this in motion, because in this great big dumpster fire of a world that we're living in right now, it seems like nothing is within anybody's control. And just the ability for one person to do one thing and do what is within your control to try to make a difference. It is such, I don't know, it's a good feeling that, did this one thing, and not just for selfish reasons, but just the seeing the halo effect that it's had in people who we've ended up interacting with. People who don't even know us have come by our office to make donations, and really have gravitated and raise their hand and say, I want to help, and it's within our organization, outside our organization, within the industry. And it's been reaffirming to see, at a time when it's easy to focus on the negative. There is a lot of positive going on.
Yeah. And, I'll close with this. It's, it's a drop in the bucket, what we're doing, but it's a very important drop, it's a very important drop, and it's never just one person, right? It's like, and this is part of being a purpose-driven organization and truly meaning it. No other, person in my position would have been allowed by their own organization to do it, but it was never even a question. We never even had to talk about it that much. It's like, yeah, that's of course what we're doing. And there was an immediate rush of support from the senior leadership team, from the owners, and still the vast majority of our online donations are coming from people at the Starr Conspiracy. And this was, I think, in any other organization where that purpose doesn't run deep and is sewn into everything else that you do, this might seem kind of wacky to folks, and you might have to do a lot of explaining. We never encountered that because everybody was rowing in that same direction right from the start. Yeah. So we're immersed in it. So I don't know what to say, man. I think that it's important that people understand why we're doing what we're doing, not because it adds to our esteem or anything, but because we are a successful business. I know you love it when I do this, but we are a successful business by any measure, knocking on the door of 100 employees, been in business for a long time, and the best stretch of our business performance that has lasted years now has been based on shifting to a purpose-driven organization and living our purpose, starting with our own people. And if people could see that what we're doing in Ukraine with our friends at Respect Studio is tied to us living our purpose, and that all of this can still be done in an ecosystem that generates value for shareholders and for customers, and for everybody who works for the organization, then I think more people will have the courage, to start making some of these counterintuitive decisions that flow from a deep sense of purpose.
Well said, Bret.
Well, then let's end it there. It's good talking to you, Steve.
It's good talking to you as always.